Has llegado a misterios de la oscuridad. En este espacio prohibido, la noche oculta verdades demasiado aterradoras para ser reveladas a la luz del día. Aquí, los misterios que emergen del abismo oscuro desvelan secretos que harán temblar tu cordura. Las historias que estás por descubrir desafiarán todo lo que creías conocer, envolviéndote en un torbellino de miedos y enigmas. Ten cuidado al avanzar, pues algunas puertas, una vez abiertas, nunca podrán cerrarse, y sus revelaciones podrían costarte más de lo que imaginas. The sterile quiet of the 37th floor, a stratum supposedly dormant after hours, fractured the instant those muffled tones reached me. That break heralded the end of my predictable orbit as Silas, nocturnal custodian for Zenith Solutions, and my sudden unwilling induction into something far more malignant. The life I knew, a cycle of ammonia fumes, squeaking carts, and the slow accretion of words for a novel penned in the dead hours, dissolved that Tuesday night. I was navigating the polished tundra of the corridor, my mop painting transient swirls on the floor, when the sound pricked the silence. Voices, subdued but insistent, leaking from the executive sanctum, the boardroom. An auditory hallucination? The building, save for skeletal security and us, the sanitation specters, was meant to be void. Yet curiosity, that treacherous impulse, tugged me forward. My own pulse hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat I feared might betray me as I sidled towards the heavy oak door, cracked open just enough to bleed sound. The consignment docks tomorrow. A baritone rumbled, smooth but edged with granite. All arrangements must be flawless. And the authorities? A thinner voice, laced with anxiety, cut in. Their inquiries have become persistent. They are being managed, the first voice dismissed, the undertone hardening. My network is thorough. They pose no obstacle. Ice water sluiced through my veins. Not a clandestine strategy session, but the architecture of crime, sketched out in hushed tones. Perhaps I shifted, perhaps a breath hitched, a minuscule betrayal, because the voices abruptly ceased. The sharp scrape of chairs on the floor echoed ominously. "What was that?" the anxious voice Finch whispered. "Investigate," the baritone commanded. Raw panic detonated within me. The hallway stretched before me, a brightly lit expanse offering zero sanctuary. Desperation flung me towards a nearby alcove, a cramped supply closet smelling faintly of bleach and old rags. I slipped inside, easing the door almost shut just as measured footsteps approached. Through the sliver of vision afforded by the gap, I saw him. Tailored suit, sharp eyes sweeping the corridor, radiating contained menace. Thorn. My heart threatened to batter its way out of my chest. He paused, listening. Then, after an eternity compressed into seconds, turned back. "Nothing," I heard him report. "A draft, perhaps." I remained entombed in the closet, scarcely drawing breath, a prisoner to their continued plotting. Talk of manifests, untraceable payments, of neutralizing impediments, human impediments. It felt ripped from some lurid screenplay. Only the stale air and the tremor in my own hands were starkly real. Hours seemed to crawl by before. Finally, the sounds of departure, chairs pushed back, footsteps receding, the distant electronic sigh of the elevator. Only then did I venture out, limbs stiff, mind reeling. What path now? The constabulary? But Thorne's confidence about his network. What if their tendrils reached into the very institutions meant to protect? What if reporting them merely signed my own death warrant? I completed my rounds mechanically, a phantom haunted by echoes, startled by every creak and groan of the sleeping tower. By the time the digital clock permitted my escape at 6:00 a.m., a resolve had solidified amidst the fear. I required irrefutable proof. The following night, a compact digital recorder nestled in my pocket, a cold weight of mingled dread and determination. It was a gamble bordering on suicidal, but without tangible evidence my story was just the frantic raving of a janitor. Floor after floor yielded nothing but the familiar nocturnal symphony of humming servers and settling foundations. Doubt began to gnaw. Had the strain of solitude and sleeplessness conjured phantoms? Then, near 2 a.m., the phantom spoke again. Voices emanating from the same 37th floor boardroom. My pulse surged. Recorder activated, I crept near. More participants this time, at least 5 distinct timbers weaving a tapestry of conspiracy around the imminent consignment. Details surfaced. A specific warehouse by the waterfront. A precise time, 3:30 a.m. I captured as much as my fraying nerves allowed before melting back into the shadows, my grip on the mop handle slick with sweat. I possessed it now. The toxic truth, digitally caged. Terror, sharp and immediate, eclipsed the earlier dread. Discovery now meant swift, certain erasure. I had to reach the authorities now. Abandoning my route, I aimed for the ground floor, intending to vanish into the pre-dawn city and make for the nearest precinct. But as the elevator doors slid open onto the marble expanse of the lobby, my blood turned to slush. 2 figures stood waiting, Thorne and Finch, their faces illuminated by the cold lobby lights, and their eyes locked onto mine. "Well now," Thorne purred, the sound chillingly congruent with the voice from the recording. "Working diligently, are we, custodian?" My throat constricted. Just finishing up, sir." His smile was a predatory curve, devoid of warmth. "Curious. I thought I glimpsed you near the executive suites earlier. That area isn't typically on your cleaning schedule, is it?" They knew. The certainty hit like a physical blow. Perhaps you should accompany us," Finch added, his hand reaching out. Instinct screamed. I reacted without thought, ramming my heavy cleaning cart towards them. They stumbled, surprised. In that fleeting moment of disarray, I bolted, bursting through the glass doors into the cool embrace of the night. Shouts erupted behind me, the drumming of pursuing feet gaining ground. The city streets were sparsely populated veins, offering little cover. I plunged into alleyways slick with refuse, scaled chain-link fences that tore at my clothes, driven by a primal need to escape. How long I ran, I couldn't say. My lungs burned, legs turned to stone, yet fear was an inexhaustible fuel. Then, salvation, the illuminated sign of a police station, a beacon against the encroaching dawn. I stumbled through the entrance, breath tearing from my chest. The desk sergeant, Miller, looked up, startled. "Help me," I gasped, collapsing against the counter. "They're chasing me. Zenith Solutions. I have proof. Illegal." The subsequent hours were a vortex of adrenaline-laced recounting. The small recorder passed into evidence bags, faces of detectives, Harding, stern but attentive, swimming before my eyes as I repeated my narrative. As the first fragile light of morning slanted through the station windows, Detective Harding approached, his expression somber. "Mr. Silas," he began, using the name I'd given, "your courage tonight is commendable. This recording, it confirms suspicions, but the scope is far larger than anticipated. For your safety, we need to arrange protective custody immediately." The immensity crashed down. My inadvertent peek behind the corporate veil had exposed a rot that ran deep, and my own life was now irrevocably altered. The months that followed were a disorienting blur of nondescript safe houses, sterile courtrooms, and the constant nagging prickle of being watched. The Zenith Solutions case exploded into the headlines, a sprawling enterprise encompassing everything from illicit finance to human exploitation. My testimony, my recording, helped dismantle much of it, yet key figures, thorn among them, vanished into the ether. Even now, years removed, relocated under a new identity, phantom footsteps sometimes echo in my periphery during the deepest hours of night. The quiet life, the half-finished novel, seem like relics from another existence. Regret occasionally whispers, tempting me with the allure of blissful ignorance, of simply having pushed my mop and minded my own business. But then I recall the faces glimpsed in news reports, those freed from the network's grasp, and the knowledge settles, heavy but certain. Despite the fear, despite the exile, the choice was necessary. So, heed this. Should you ever find yourself alone in the quiet hours and hear whispers where silence should reign, understand the potential gravity. Sometimes the most vital cleansing isn't achieved with disinfectants and cloths, but by dragging filth into the light. Be warned, though. Once you peer into that abyss, the ordinary world is lost forever. Truth, I discovered, is a formidable weapon, but it cuts both ways, especially when wielded against the darkness thriving in the opulent shadows of glass towers and behind the closed doors of power. Initial sighting? Chalked it up to phantoms birthed by fatigue, the mind's mirages under duress. Isolation breeds such things, especially 50 miles deep in nowhere, guarding skeletons of construction under a shroud of night. But the phenomena that followed defy such simple dismissal. Not the impressions in the mud, nor the vanished implements, nor the chilling sum of it all. For 15 years, my nights belonged to the lonely vigil over construction sites, typically urban sprawls, where the chief menaces were youths scavenging copper or the unhoused seeking refuge. This assignment, however, pulsed with a different energy from its inception, the Whisperwind Gorge Dam Initiative. nestled high in remote mountain terrain. No tendrils of the cellular network reached here. Only an emergency radio served as my tenuous link to the known world. The compensation offered was triple the standard rate, a fact that should have resonated as the first discordant note. My predecessor had vanished from the roster abruptly, merely 2 weeks into his tenure. Personal difficulties? The foreman had tersely explained. I refrained from probing further. Remuneration is its own logic. The inaugural week unfolded uneventfully. Arrive at dusk, exchange curt nods with the departing day shift, commence the solitary patrol. A sprawling scar upon the valley floor, the Whisperwind Gorge project sprawled across 20 acres, skeletal dam reaching skyward, clusters of temporary structures like fungal growths, yards overflowing with dormant machinery and raw materials. Portable floodlights stabbed cones of sterile luminescence into the void, carving islands of stark visibility from an ocean of encroaching wilderness and profound shadow. My rhythm was established. Perimeter walks every 2 hours, inspections of the equipment compound, surveillance feed monitored within the primary trailer, ensuring the slumber of heavy machines. Mundane duties. This pattern fractured on my 8th night. During the Deep Watch 2 a.m. circuit, I perceived it. An apparition coalesced at the fringe of illumination cast by Tower 3, adjacent to the Eastern Machinery Park. A silhouette, unnaturally tall, perhaps nearing 7 feet, too distant for granular detail, merely a stark column against the profound blackness. My hand sought the heft of my maglite. Declare yourself. This area is restricted. The form remained inert, offering no acknowledgement. I advanced, the crunch of my boots on the aggregate loud in the stillness. Security personnel, armed, vacate the premises immediately. A necessary fabrication. Company dictated no firearms, but trespassers needn't know the truth. 20 yards distant now, still no discernible reaction. A prickling unease traced my spine. Its posture radiated wrongness, an absolute lapidary stillness. Final warning, authorities are being summoned. 15 yards. Closer now, caught more fully in the floodlight's stark glare. The figure seemed clad in dark, heavy work attire, sturdy boots crowned with a standard-issue hard hat. 10 yards. My pulse hammered against my ribs. The entity's proportions felt skewed, dissonant. Limbs elongated, the neck canted unnervingly. 5 yards. I elevated the torch beam towards its presumed face. Illuminated absence, utter void where features should reside. I froze, paralyzed. The cone of light sliced through empty atmosphere where the figure had stood but an instant prior. Only vacant space remained, bordered by the night beyond the tower's reach. I whirled, sweeping the beam frantically. Nothing. No echo of retreating footsteps. No flicker of movement within the dense shadows. Only the omnipresent drone of the generators tirelessly feeding the lights. Tremors in my hands betrayed me as I keyed the radio. Control. This is Corbin. Confirming site status. Am I the sole personnel present? A crackle of static yielded the dispatcher's disembodied reply. Affirmative, Corbin. Just your watch tonight. Situation nominal. A pause stretched. Affirmative. Transient visual. Likely fatigue. I completed the rounds with heightened vigilance, scrutinizing every pocket of darkness. Nothing deviated from the norm. By sunrise's fragile light, I'd nearly rationalized the encounter as a trick of weary perception. Then upon entering the main trailer to log out, I observed the muddy footprints. Immense impressions leading directly from the eastern equipment yard to the trailer door. The mud glistened, impossibly wet. No rain had fallen for over a week. I traced them inside. They marched unequivocally to the tool storage enclosure. The door remained locked, precisely as I'd left it. Yet upon opening it, a visceral wrongness permeated the air. The space, meticulously organized per protocol the previous evening, now displayed jarring vacancies. Tools were conspicuously absent from their designated places on the pegboard walls. A heavy-duty chainsaw, 2 industrial demolition hammers, a diamond-bladed concrete saw, implements of significant heft, too cumbersome for silent, single-handed removal. I reviewed the security feeds. All 8 cameras presented an unblinking, monotonous record of an empty site throughout the night. No intruders, no motion detected. Only the inexplicable footprints and the pilfered tools remained as testament. I reported the discrepancy to the foreman upon his arrival. He evinced no surprise, merely a weary resignation. Echoes of last month, he murmured, gaze averted. And the cycle before, always coinciding with the dark of the moon. Always those specific tools. They reappear days later, crusted in mire and something else. An odor like decay clinging to them. Why was this information withheld during my hiring? He offered a non-committal shrug. Would knowledge of it have altered your acceptance? The urge to abandon the post then and there was potent. Prudence screamed for retreat. Yet the substantial pay, coupled with an unsettling fascination, anchored me. A compulsion to comprehend the nature of what I'd witnessed had taken root. The subsequent nights lapsed into an unnerving quietude, an absence of typical wilderness sounds. No chirping crickets, no hooting owls. Silence, profound save for the sighing wind and the generator's drone. Other anomalies surfaced. The floodlights, despite independent circuits, would occasionally flicker in unison. Tools materialized in locations different from where I distinctly remembered placing them, even within the supposedly secure storage room. Then commenced the skittering susurrus. First, detected within the thin walls of the office trailer while reviewing footage. A slow, deliberate scraping, as if talons sought purchase from within. Placing a hand against the paneling, I felt the subtle vibrations. Silence fell the instant my light sought the source. This auditory haunting pursued me nightly, migrating, emanating from beneath the chemical toilets, under the chassis of earth movers, behind stacked steel containers, always ceasing just shy of discovery. I instituted a new ritual, photographing everything at shift start, tool placements, equipment positions, tire tracks, comparing them meticulously at shift end. Minor unsettling alterations accumulated. A spanner displaced by inches, a hard hat rotated on its hook. surveyor stakes driven fractionally deeper. The day crew remained oblivious. Whatever transpired, it was intrinsically nocturnal. A week after the initial sighting, the first message appeared, gouged crudely into the office door's paint. "Depart." The foreman painted over it before the day shift arrived, asking no questions. Another layer added to the unspoken conspiracy of silence. 2 nights later, another missive, carved into the wooden handle of a shovel. Primal claim. Driven by unease, I delved into the site's history. The dam project, long stalled by environmental objections and litigation, occupied land previously untouched wilderness. But further back, archives whispered of an 1880s mining operation. Records, fragmented and obscure, spoke of catastrophe, a shaft collapse, entombing 27 souls whose remains were never reclaimed. The mine entrance, sealed with dynamite, its precise coordinates lost to time. Yet overlaying archaic survey maps onto the dam blueprints sent a glacial dread through me. The eastern equipment yard, the very ground where the initial figure manifested, sat squarely atop the presumed location of that buried shaft. I presented my findings to the foreman. He refused engagement, stating historical concerns were corporate matters. His hands trembled as he deflected. That night, the temperature plummeted 30 degrees within minutes. The generators, the site's mechanical heartbeats, faltered, sputtered. One by one, the floodlights yielded, surrendering vast swathes of the construction zone to abyssal black. I was mid-patrol when the darkness consumed the periphery. Backup batteries should have activated. They remained dormant. My own torch beam seemed frail, absorbed by the oppressive gloom. Then, the sound. Footfalls on the gravel, heavy, rhythmic, behind me. A turn revealed nothing but intensified darkness. Yet the steps persisted, describing a closing circle. My faltering light snagged on movement, forms detaching themselves from the periphery. 6, 7, perhaps 8 figures materializing. Clad in antiquated miner's garb, impossibly tall, limbs disturbingly long. Hard hats cast their faces into impenetrable shadow. They formed a silent cordon, poised just beyond the feeble reach of my light, heads cocked at angles defying anatomy. The radio erupted in static, pierced by a chorus, a legion of voices speaking as one. Sanctuary ours, tools ours, earth ours. The deep black below claims dominion. The static surged, swallowing all sound. My flashlight winked out. Blindness. Movement now, the crunch of numerous boots converging. I fled, stumbling through the Stygian landscape, tripping over unseen obstacles. Behind the measured pace of pursuit, never closer, never farther, an inexorable metronome of dread. Reaching the office trailer, I slammed and bolted the door, fumbling for the emergency lamp. Its beam illuminated the windows, each framed by a silent sentinel. Hard hats now tilted upward, revealing visages that were naught but gaping maws of shadow, punctuated by rows of teeth. The scraping resumed, amplified, emanating not from the walls, but beneath the very floorboards. Louder, frantic. The trailer shuddered, the floor planks groaned, splintered. Oozing between the cracks came a thick, dark slurry, mud redolent of rot and rusted iron. Shattering a far window, away from the watchers, I launched myself into the night and ran again, propelled by primal terror, not pausing until 10 miles lay between me and that cursed ground. From a distant payphone's greasy receiver, I tendered my resignation. The foreman's voice frayed. They always do. My final wages would arrive by mail. That departure was seasons ago. The missing implements surfaced a week hence, abandoned in the constabulary parking lot, thick with the same unwholesome mud and corrosion. The Whisperwind Gorge project persists, a wound slow to heal, cycling through night watchmen like disposable parts. The turnover is staggering, yet desperation continually supplies new candidates. A morbid curiosity sometimes gnaws, a pull towards understanding what those entities are, their purpose, why I alone was permitted egress when those miners centuries past were not. But the memory resurfaces, those abyssal faces, the teeth within the void. And the second carving echoes, primal claim. Perhaps they remain, eternally working their subterranean tenure, utilizing their reclaimed tools, pacing their rounds in the endless night. Some knowledge remains best unearthed. Last week, an envelope arrived, bearing no sender's mark. Inside, a single sheet, scarred with the familiar jagged script. We await thee, sentinel of night. Return to the depths. Thy place is kept. I consigned it to flames, relocated. Yet occasionally the faint sound of scraping troubles the silence of my own walls. And sometimes, peering out into the pre-dawn gray, I spy fresh boot prints in dew-kissed soil where none should be. They linger, they anticipate, and a chilling certainty suggests my return is not a question of if, but when. The deep dark burrows within, an infection of the soul, refusing release. For now, I embrace the daylight hours, the city's clamor, striving to forget the nocturnal sentinels of Whisperwind Gorge, to ignore the project's glacial progress, the relentless turnover of guards, to suppress the question of how many more will flee before completion, if completion is even possible. Some foundations are laid on unwilling ground, some darkness resists the light, and some vigils belong not to the living. These thoughts are my fragile shield against the night. Most nights they suffice. That first night, the intrusion began subtly, near the witching hour. I sat submerged in work papers, lamplight pooling around me, when the ceiling whispered, delicate taps, like fingernails tracing wood grain just above my head. A branch against the shingles, perhaps. I dismissed it, returning to the dense paragraphs. Then a coarser rasp, the drag of something substantial across the attic floorboards. An electric current prickled my spine. I rose, ghosting through the silent rooms, listening intently. But the disturbance had already dissolved into the quiet. Exhaustion, I reasoned, a mind frayed by the day. Darkness beckoned. Sleep was the cure. I extinguished the lights and surrendered to my bed. Morning arrived with a residue of disquiet. Compelled, I ascended the stairs, the attic hatch looming. A push, a groan of old hinges. Dust motes danced in the scant light filtering from below. I expected the familiar tableau of forgotten things, trunks, spectral furniture draped in white sheets, yellowing newsprint stacks. The wooden steps complained under my weight as I climbed into the suffocating warmth. My torch beam carved arcs through the gloom. Nothing seemed amiss initially, just the usual detritus of years past. But then, my light snagged on them, long thin scores violating the floor's surface. Not scratches, but gouges, deep and deliberate, arranged in an unsettling, almost rhythmic pattern. Claw marks. My stomach constricted. Running a fingertip along one groove, I felt the splintered sharpness of its edge. A slow exhale, a forced calm. An animal, surely. A frantic search of corners yielded no nests, no droppings, nothing to corroborate the mundane explanation. Yet these incisions, they spoke of something other than raccoon or squirrel. Downstairs, the house felt different, watchful. Work offered its usual barrage, meetings, ringing phones, petty crises. But the image of those floorboard scars remained superimposed on my vision. Strange theories flickered. A vagrant finding refuge. Implausible. It didn't account for the Talon's calligraphy. Home again, resolve hardened. I would seal any potential ingress. Outside, perched precariously on a ladder, I scanned the roofline, the vents, the shadowed eaves. The house, though aged, presented a surprisingly intact facade. No obvious breach, no gaping maw large enough for anything beyond a bird or bat. Certainly not whatever could carve wood so deeply. That evening, concentration became an impossibility. Around 11, the familiar rasping resumed, directly overhead. This time it traversed the ceiling with slow, measured steps. I stood frozen in the hallway beneath its path, heart hammering against my ribs, palms slick with sweat. Listening, I tracked its deliberate progress towards the attic's threshold. The torch, retrieved from a kitchen drawer, felt heavy, inadequate. My gaze fixed on the hatch, a portal I dreaded opening, fear warred with a desperate need to know. With trembling hands, I pulled the cord. The ladder descended with a reluctant clatter. One step up, two, the beam slicing into the darkness above. Empty. The air hung thick, stale, silent, save for the frantic pulse in my ears and the ragged sound of my own breathing. The scratching had ceased. Hesitantly, I hauled myself the rest of the way up, planting my feet amidst the dust. The torch swept left, right, illuminating suspended particles like miniature galaxies. Stillness reigned. Cautiously, I navigated towards the far corner, nudging aside boxes with my foot, tapping the drywall. Nothing stirred, yet tension coiled tight in my shoulders, the fine hairs on my neck erect. A palpable sense of wrongness permeated the space, though its source remained hidden. After 5 minutes of fruitless searching, a feeling of absurdity washed over me. Retreating, I pulled the hatch closed, securing the lock. Ridiculous, perhaps, but the certainty that I was not alone lingered like a bad taste. Several days unfurled in deceptive peace. No further nocturnal disturbances. The memory of the sounds began to feel exaggerated, a product of fatigue, until the 4th night. An odor, insidious and vile, crept into the hallway. It struck like a physical blow, the stench of sulfurous decay, of stagnant, forgotten water. I traced its origin upward to the sealed attic door. Dread twisted in my gut. Unlatching it released a thicker wave of the miasma, stinging my eyes, Pressing my shirt against my nose and mouth, I climbed only a few steps, sweeping the torch beam around. The familiar clutter, the shrouded furniture, nothing more. I backed down quickly, sealing the door again. The remainder of the night was spent in my bedroom, window flung wide to the clean night air, mind racing. A dead animal? Perhaps. But those gouges, they clawed at the edges of rational thought. Over the ensuing week, a chilling lunar correlation emerged. As the moon waxed towards fullness, the nightly intrusions intensified. What began as faint scrabbling escalated into heavy thuds, the ceiling groaning under a ponderous weight, crawling from end to end. Sometimes a dragging sound, laborious and uneven, as if something hauled its own bulk across the joists. When I moved through the house below, the sounds often mirrored my position, a grotesque shadow play from above. Trapped. Music offered little solace. The vibration still pulsed through the plaster. Enough. I purchased a cheap, motion-activated camera and a small battery lamp, positioning them near the attic entrance, angled to capture any passage. Night fell. I doused the house lights, retreated to the living room, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the ceiling. A vigil. Around midnight, the shuffling began anew. My heart became a frantic drum against my ribs. "Stay calm," I mouthed silently. Morning light brought the verdict, mostly impenetrable darkness on the footage. The lamp triggered sporadically, illuminating swirling dust. Then for a fleeting moment, a shape, hunched low to the ground, caught at the periphery of the lens. It vanished almost instantly as the light clicked off. Replay after replay yielded no further detail, only that fleeting impression of something quadrupedal, yet unsettlingly large. Larger than any common nocturnal visitor. A cold certainty settled in my chest. This was no ordinary beast. The next night, a desperate gamble. I left the attic hatch unlocked. When the telltale movements commenced around 1 a.m., I took the torch, inhaled sharply, and began the ascent, this time in utter darkness. Sweat beaded on my forehead, my stomach a knot of ice. The pounding in my ears threatened to betray me. Halfway up, the stench assaulted me. That same putrescence, now overpowering, visceral. My eyes streamed. I fought the urge to gag. From the far side of the attic, near a heap of old blankets, came a distinct scraping. I aimed the beam. Only fabric lumps met the light. Then a low hiss sliced through the silence. My hand trembled violently. A single cautious step forward. Movement flickered at the edge of my vision. Pale integument, a flash of elongated limb disappearing behind a steamer trunk. My breath hitched, rooted by a paralyzing blend of terror and morbid curiosity. I couldn't retreat. I heard it then, breathing wet and labored, a rasping struggle for air. Slowly, carefully, I began to back away. My foot snagged a loose floorboard. Creak. I froze. The hissing intensified, sharp, serrated. Swinging the torch back towards the trunk, I caught sight of it. An attenuated arm or leg snaking around the edge. Impossibly thin, ending in what looked chillingly like long skeletal fingers or claws. No face visible. Raw panic erupted. I turned, scrambling, half falling down the ladder, lungs burning. Stumbling into the hallway, I slammed the hatch shut, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. Gasping, sweat stinging my eyes, heart threatening to burst. What was that? Mind frantic, I locked the door, then jammed a chair beneath the handle for good measure, collapsing onto the floor, shaking uncontrollably. Sleep was a distant country. The following morning, hollowed out by fear and exhaustion, I called in sick. At the kitchen table, coffee untouched, I stared numbly at the ceiling hatch. Whom could I call? Animal control? The police? "There's a thing in my attic," I imagined saying. The derision, the disbelief. Besides, what had I truly seen? A pale limb? A shadow? My mind cycled through possibilities. A diseased animal, perhaps, afflicted with some grotesque mange. Yet the shape, the form, felt disturbingly anthropomorphic. The day dissolved in restless pacing, scrutinizing windows, walls, the very foundation, seeking the impossible entry point. Nothing. By evening, the noxious bloom had somewhat receded, though its phantom lingered in the upper hallway. The moon, I noted with a tightening gut, was nearly full. Coffee became my ally against encroaching drowsiness. I had no strategy, only a grim determination to bear witness. Around 10, the first faint scratches returned, a prelude. Soon they intensified, joined by that awful dragging sound. I remained in the darkened living room, paralyzed by a strange numbness. Then a new horror. The sounds migrated directly to the attic hatch. The handle rattled. I shot upright, eyes wide, fixed on the hallway. The door held but vibrated visibly in its frame. The handle turned just slightly. Wood groaned under pressure. My mouth was dust. A moment's pause, then a heavy thump from the ceiling directly above me. Phone clutched in my hand. The impulse to call for help warred with utter immobility. After several agonizing minutes, the rattling ceased. The presence retreated, its scraping resuming from the attic's far side, a sound like morbid excavation. I stood, breath held, listening, until an hour later silence fell once more, leaving only the lingering odor and the frantic rhythm of my own heart. The subsequent nights adhered to the grim pattern. The full moon presided over peak activity, peak stench. The rest of the month offered relative quiet, punctuated by occasional unnerving scratches. Earplugs muted the sounds, but not the low thrum of vibration through the house's bones. Daytime forays into the attic remained fruitless, only the persistent claw marks and the disturbed detritus mocking my attempts to understand. Traps, baited and hopeful, lay untouched. The camera captured only shadows, dust, the occasional inexplicable shift of an object just out of frame. Each check drained me further, the knowledge of its continued presence a constant, gnawing weight. Last week, the lunar cycle began its climb anew. Dread arrived with the first sliver of waxing crescent, a visceral, cold sweat. Appetite vanished. Locks were checked, rechecked. I fortified the attic hatch, adding new bolts, even installing a heavy external latch, a desperate measure to contain the uncontainable, a flimsy barrier against something that could score hardwood like paper. I still hear it. Tonight, the moon hangs full and luminous, a cold eye in the sky. Midnight approaches. I sit bathed in electric light, unable to bear the shadows. A baseball bat rests against the armchair, a pathetic talisman. My legs tremble, my jaw aches from unconscious clenching. Above, the movements are sporadic, bursts of frantic scrabbling followed by unnerving, pregnant silences. The house breathes a stale, fetid air, but the windows remain sealed tight against the night, and perhaps against what might try to enter or exit. Every creak, every settling sigh of the old structure sends jolts through my system. The memory of that pale, elongated limb, the sharp, sibilant hiss, they replay endlessly. Not an animal growl, but something colder, more articulate. A warning. What vigil does it keep up there during the silent days? How does it sustain itself between these lunar frenzies? Does it possess intelligence, an understanding of locks and latches? These questions spiral, consuming my thoughts. Moments ago, 3 distinct, heavy thuds resonated from above, as if something large were thrown against the far wall. I leaped to my feet, poised for flight, but the silence returned, thick and watchful. The faintest trace of that rotten perfume still taints the air. Breathing shallowly through my mouth, I fight exhaustion, fight the urge to close my stinging eyes. What does it want? Does it intend to breach the hatch? The tension is a physical ache across my shoulders. I've made a decision. When dawn breaks, I leave. A motel, a friend's couch, anywhere but here. Distance is the only answer I have left. Confrontation feels like suicide. This constant siege has hollowed me out. Sleep, focus, appetite, all casualties of this unseen war. Now I wait, listening to the house, listening for the latch. If it gives, if that door begins to open, I run. My hands shake at the thought. No more investigations, no more morbid curiosity. Enough of the smell, the sounds, the slivers of revealed horror. My pulse accelerates, a frantic bird trapped in my chest. Silence reigns for now, but it's a deceptive calm. I know it's up there, waiting, aware, listening to my breathing just as I listen for its claws. There is no neat resolution here, no comforting explanation on the horizon. Only the stark reality. Something resides in the space above my head, something with claws tethered to the moon's cycle. I have glimpsed its edges, inhaled its foul essence, felt its movements through the very structure of my home. That is the extent of my knowledge. And tonight, under the brilliant, indifferent moon, time stretches thin, each second an agony of anticipation. Every floorboard groan, every distant siren makes me flinch. The unnerving conviction grows. It knows I'm down here. It listens. All I can do is count the minutes until sunrise, pray the flimsy latch holds, and hope to escape this house intact. Let it keep the attic, the dust, the darkness. I just want the morning. I just want to be gone. The genesis was utterly unremarkable. A Tuesday, sun slanting through the tall windows of Éclat, the boutique where I curated moods with silk scarves and silver charms. He materialized beside a mannequin draped in evening wear, a man adrift in middle age, adrift in a nondescript polo and chinos, the sort easily dissolved into any crowd. His query regarded my car, a vibrant crimson Kestrel parked curbside. Something technical, esoteric, about its drivetrain. My reply was courteous, deliberately nebulous. Precisely 72 hours later, he surfaced again. This time amidst the clatter of spoons and conversation at a bistro 15 miles distant, where I shared soup with my sister, Chloe. The same shirt, the same automotive curiosity. Chloe's gaze sharpened, catching the sudden tremor in my hand. the way the minestrone turned to ash on my tongue. "Friend of yours?" she murmured as his silhouette retreated. A silent shake of my head was my only answer, though a cold, tight knot had already begun coiling low in my belly. The subsequent fortnight unfolded like a series of unsettling vignettes. He was a phantom presence outside my spin class, a silent observer near the dairy aisle at the supermarket, a static figure in the cinema parking lot as I waited for friends. Always the kestrel, always the questions, always lingering a breath too close, his gaze following me long after the pretense of conversation had evaporated. Each appearance chipped away at the veneer of coincidence, revealing something calculated beneath. Maybe he's just a real kestrel enthusiast? Maya, my colleague at Eclat, offered, though her brow furrowed with doubt. Yet she began escorting me to my car after we locked up, her phone subtly angled to capture his license plate the next time his bland sedan materialized in our lot. His inquiries began to shift, subtly, insidiously. He probed for the name of my mechanic, the garage where I had the oil changed, the specific tapestry of streets I wove to reach my work. It felt like triangulation, each question another pin pushed into a map, charting the geography of my life. My evasions, the fabricated names and routes, were met with a thin smile that never warmed his eyes, a smile that whispered, "I know you're lying." I started terraforming my routine. Unfamiliar avenues, different grocers, cafes chosen at random. It didn't matter. He found me. Browsing novels in a bookstore I'd never entered before, there he was, inquiring about fuel economy. Standing sentinel between rows of blooming roses at a garden center 30 miles from my apartment, wondering aloud about my preferred brand of tire rubber. The police listened, logged a report, offered sympathetic platitudes. Without overt threats, without a clear transgression of statute, their hands were tied. Document everything, they advised. Vary your patterns. Stay vigilant. A personal safety app bloomed on my phone screen, broadcasting my coordinates to chosen contacts. Chloe helped install miniature cameras, electronic eyes watching over my doorstep. At Eclat, Maya orchestrated a buddy system for breaks and closing shifts. Friends initiated a cadence of check-ins, weaving a net of casual surveillance around my solitude. Still he materialized, his questions growing sharper, more insistent, that chilling smile a permanent fixture. One evening, bathed in the stark fluorescent glow of the boutique after hours, I was immersed in inventory spreadsheets, preparing for a weekend sale. Through the expansive front window, I saw his car parked directly across the quiet street. He'd been stationary for hours, a study in passive observation. Maya's vehicle sat beside mine, a silent promise of company, but she'd departed an hour prior, catching a ride with her boyfriend, Liam. As my key turned in the lock, a click echoing in the stillness, he emerged from his car. "Lovely evening," he called, his steps closing the distance between us. "Ideal for a drive. How's that transmission behaving?" My fingers trembled against the cool metal of my keys, but I willed my voice into a semblance of steadiness. "My brother's meeting me," I lied, the falsehood tasting metallic. "He's on the force. Due any second now." A flicker of hesitation crossed his face before the vacant smile returned. "Just being neighborly," he offered, though a hard edge now roughened his tone. Funny thing, my own transmission's been acting up. Thought we might compare notes. At that precise moment, twin beams of light sliced through the darkness, sweeping across the asphalt. Liam hadn't left. He'd been waiting, just out of sight around the corner. His engine rumbled as he pulled alongside me. "Everything all right here, Alara?" Thorne recoiled slightly, hands rising in a gesture of mock surrender. "Just talking automobiles," he murmured, but his eyes, intense and possessive, remained locked on mine, prickling my skin. He retreated to his car and drove off into the night, leaving behind a silence thick with unspoken threat. I knew it wasn't finished. The following morning, I sought a restraining order. The dossier I presented, a meticulous collection of photographs, time-stamped locations, witness accounts from Maya and Chloe, told its own stark narrative. The judge granted the order swiftly. Yet, paper is merely paper. It assigns consequence but cannot erect impenetrable walls. News of the order rippled through the local merchant community. Shopkeepers exchanged descriptions, employees kept watch. Warnings were shared like covert intelligence. ECLA upgraded its security system. The bistro posted discreet notices regarding customer safety, educating its staff on recognizing predatory behaviors. I enrolled in a self-defense course at the community center. Miss Anya Sharma taught us not just blocks and strikes, but the psychology of defense, maintaining boundaries, the critical importance of trusting intuition, the power vested in a firm voice. "Politeness," she stated unequivocally, "never outweighs your safety." Chloe suggested selling the Kestrel, erasing the focal point of his obsession. I refused. "If I dismantle my life piece by piece," I told her, "he wins." Instead, I had the car meticulously swept for tracking devices, the windows deeply tinted. A dash cam, recording both forward and rear views, became my silent, vigilant passenger. Small assertions of control in a situation that felt profoundly uncontrollable. The restraining order proved partially effective. Direct approaches ceased. Yet I'd catch fleeting glimpses. His car parked down the block, his figure watching from a distance, sometimes scribbling in a small notebook, his focus invariably drawn to my crimson Kestrel. The police, unable to prove pursuit beyond a reasonable doubt, increased patrols along my known routes. Other women began to surface, sharing hushed stories, not always about Thorne, but about others like him, men who weaponized casual questions, who twisted shared interests into instruments of harassment. A network began to form, organic and resilient, sharing information, offering mutual support. ECLA started hosting monthly workshops on personal safety. What began as a defense against one man's insidious campaign evolved into a community resource, empowering women with knowledge about security, boundary setting, and recognizing danger signals. Crucially, they learned about solidarity. Last week, a young woman, Sophie, maybe 16, entered the boutique, her nervousness palpable. She spoke of a man persistently asking about her car near her after-school job. Without hesitation, I activated our network, connecting her with police liaisons, Ms. Sharma, local advocates. Sometimes I still see Thorne's car navigating the town's periphery, but the fear is different now, diluted by awareness. I am no longer isolated. A community stands sentinel, eyes open, ready. His perceived power erodes with every shared description, every business refusing tacit complicity, every woman learning to heed the quiet alarm bell of her own intuition. My kestrel, once the locus of my anxiety, has transformed into something else entirely, a symbol of defiance, not dread. I keep it meticulously clean, gleaming under the sun, a daily affirmation that I will not be driven into the shadows by intimidation. Those questions, once feeling like probes mapping my vulnerabilities, now echo as the failed tactics of a man who sought control and found resistance instead. That was his fundamental misunderstanding. The car was never the point. It was merely the key he used, hoping to unlock and map a life for his own dark purposes. But in doing so, he inadvertently taught me, and countless others, a vital lesson. There are no just questions when the intent is to chart a path to your fear. Trust the feeling in your gut. Document relentlessly. And never, ever underestimate the strength found when a community decides to stand together. The highway ribboned out before Ilara, a slick black void under a starless, moonless expanse. Silence pressed in, thick and absolute, broken only by the low thrum of her engine cutting through the chilled night air. No other headlights pierced the gloom. No distant constellations of town lights glimmered, just asphalt unfurling into infinity. Her beams were dipped low, slicing a short cone through the darkness. No one else existed out here to be blinded. Weariness settled deep in her bones, a weight distinct from sleepiness, pulling her toward the promise of home, of surrender to bedding. She traced the center line with her gaze, a hypnotic guide against the drift toward oblivion. Then, something, a silhouette against the slightly less black shoulder to her right. A man swathed in dark fabric, trudging slowly onward, his back presented to her approach. He seemed gaunt, his posture stooped as if carrying an unseen burden. His gait was peculiar, stiff-legged and measured, a flicker of concern, trouble perhaps. But this desolate stretch, known only for desiccated fields and the skeletal remains of forgotten shacks miles from anywhere inhabited, wasn't a place for the stranded. Not at this hour. Prudence whispered it was no affair of hers. She maintained her speed, perhaps 40 miles per hour, gliding past him. The slowness of his pace felt dissonant, wrong. A fleeting glance as she passed caught the curve of a pale neck below short, dark hair, but nothing more defined. He offered no sign of acknowledgement, no turn of the head, no reaction to the passing machine. A solitary, quiet shape swallowed again by the night behind her. Ilara pushed the thought away and drove on. Scarcely a minute dissolved before an odd prickle traced her spine. Ahead, caught again in the sweep of her headlights, another form materialized on the right shoulder. As the distance closed, a knot of ice tightened in her stomach. The identical stance, the same measured, unhurried steps, the dark attire, that slight hunch, suggestive of fatigue or resignation. But how? She'd left him less than a mile back. No conceivable shortcut existed across these flat, empty plains. No place to vanish and reappear. Her throat constricted. She swallowed against dryness, her grip tightening on the wheel, foot steady on the accelerator. Drawing level this time, she eased her speed slightly, cracking the window just enough to admit the night air. Listening. Silence. Only the figure's relentless forward motion. She registered worn trousers, a jacket thin against the night, shoes caked with dust, implying a long pilgrimage. Yet no sheen of sweat, no ragged breath betrayed exertion. Still the face remained averted, just the back of the head, the dark hair, the impassive shoulders. She passed him again, pushing the speed now, 50, maybe more. Her mirrors reflected only receding road, empty fields stretching into nothing. She sought solace in the radio, but it answered only with a hiss of static, an indifferent void. Clicking it off, she surrendered to the engine's monotonous hum, her pulse a frantic counterpoint. A dampness bloomed on her forehead. She swiped at it with her sleeve, surprised to be sweating in the cool air. Logic scrambled for purchase. An illusion born of fatigue? Two separate wanderers, improbably alike, improbably placed? A bizarre coincidence stretched thin across the lonely miles? She breathed deep, forcing calm, fixing her eyes on the asphalt ahead. But minutes later, inevitably, he was there again. The same posture, the same glacial pace, waiting on the shoulder. Her foot slammed the brake, the car slowing to a hesitant crawl. A leaden weight settled in her gut, her breathing turning shallow. Retreat beckoned. Turn around, flee back toward the last town, miles behind. But the next outpost lay even further ahead. Trapped. Only this vacant highway and the persistent enigma, appearing and reappearing like a glitch in reality. This time, she halted the car 20 feet behind him, the engine idling, hazard lights pulsing rhythmically into the void, a hopeful beacon. She leaned across, lowering the window further. "Hey!" Her voice wavered, thin in the vast silence. She waited. He continued his unswerving walk. His shoulders rose and fell almost imperceptibly with each step. Otherwise, he was immutable. Ilara pushed the door open, her limbs feeling disconnected, her hands trembling slightly. The crunch of gravel underfoot sounded unnaturally loud. The air tasted of dust. "Hey, man," she called again, louder. "What's going on?" Silence answered. She advanced, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, the sweat cooling on her back. 6 feet separated them. He just kept moving. She could see the jacket now, old, a small tear near the hem, another faint rip on the right shoulder. His hair, short and tidy, lacked any sign of care or style. "Dude, can you hear me?" she pleaded, reaching out instinctively, then hesitating. A strange inertia filled her limbs, a chill seeping into her chest. Touching him felt like a transgression she couldn't commit. Instead, she retreated a step, circling slightly, trying to angle herself for a view of his face as she backed away. But as she shifted, he seemed to subtly adjust, keeping his features perpetually hidden, just beyond the periphery. She stumbled back to the car, eyes locked on his receding form, fumbled inside and slammed the locks home. Her breath came in ragged gasps. He walked on, slow, steady, inevitable. What recourse remained? No phone signal offered escape or explanation. Just drive, she told herself. Drive around him again, keep going. Perhaps he was a phantom tied to this specific stretch, doomed to fade eventually. She eased the car back onto the tarmac, accelerating past him once more. This time, she stared resolutely forward, refusing to look. The car felt like a sanctuary, its tires humming a mundane song on the asphalt, headlights carving a path through the indifferent night. The engine's drone was her only companion. A glance in the rearview mirror showed his form dwindling, shrinking, finally consumed by the darkness. Relief, fragile and tentative. She drove on. 10 minutes crawled by, her jaw locked tight, ahead, again, the figure. No possibility of error. Same jacket, same worn shoes, same slow, dragging cadence. "This is impossible," she whispered, the sound unnaturally loud in the confined space. Brakes squealed softly as she stopped dead in the middle of the road. She killed the engine, plunging the world into profound silence. In the sudden absence of headlights, he was barely a smudge against the dark, 50 feet ahead. She flicked the lights back on. He remained, solid, unwavering. Panic surged, a cold wave cresting in her chest. Her hands shook visibly now. She wiped her damp forehead, forcing slow, deep breaths. Turning back, truly retreating this time, seemed the only option, however long the detour. The tension in her shoulders was a physical ache as she reversed, executed a careful U-turn. Headlights swept across barren fields, revealing nothing but desolation. Facing the opposite direction, she pressed the accelerator, seeking distance, seeking escape. 5 minutes of driving back the way she came fostered a fragile sense of calm. The road looked identical. Asphalt, shoulder, emptiness. Then, hope shattered. Far ahead, caught in her beams, a figure walked on the shoulder. Him, again. Now preceding her in this direction too, walking away, eternally ahead. He occupied both paths. She slammed the brakes, tires protesting with a sharp squeal. A curse escaped her lips, bitten back before it became a scream. Slowly, she crept forward. He never turned. His pace never faltered. A loop, inescapable. This time she tried the horn, a jarring blast that assaulted the silence, echoing back at her. No reaction. She pressed it again, longer, leaning on it until the sound filled the car, vibrated through her seat. Nothing. He simply walked on. Releasing the horn, she felt the frantic pulse in her throat, breathed raggedly through a dry mouth. Getting out again felt unthinkable. Fear was a physical presence now, tightening her chest, making her legs feel heavy and useless. Her head throbbed. Her palms left damp prints on the steering wheel. A frantic search of the glove compartment yielded nothing useful. No weapon. Only her phone's useless flashlight function. No signal. Just Ilara, her car, and the relentless, inexplicable figure. She resolved to pass him again, swerving wide into the opposite lane to maximize the distance. As she rolled by, she craned her neck, leaning across the passenger seat, one hand white-knuckled on the wheel, desperate for a glimpse of his face. A sliver of pale cheek, perhaps the curve of an ear, nothing more. He kept his head angled slightly down, slightly forward, a posture of deliberate evasion. Onward. She forced herself to drive, to ignore him. Treat him as a mirage, a trick of tired eyes. Just keep moving until civilization reappeared. A gas station, a diner, anything with lights and people. Someone else to see this, to validate her sanity or confirm her breakdown. Anything but this crushing solitude. The miles bled together. The darkness felt absolute, suffocating. She flicked on the interior light momentarily, catching her own reflection in the mirror. wide haunted eyes a sheen of sweat. The light went off. Focus on the road. Another 10 minutes, perhaps. There he was. Same man, same posture, same shoulder. She struck the steering wheel with her fist. "Come on!" The shout echoed, raw with a fear now curdled with anger. Her legs trembled beneath her. She floored the accelerator, rocketing past him without a sideways glance. Heart hammering, breath sawing in her chest. 60 miles per hour now. Slowing down was pointless. He would manifest regardless. Another eternity dissolved on the empty road, and then predictably he reappeared. Same spot, same slow steps. Her knuckles ached from gripping the wheel. No slowing this time. She rolled the window down fully, and as she flashed past, screamed into the night. "Who the hell are you?" Her voice cracked, swallowed by the wind and the engine's roar. No answer, no reaction. She drove. He appeared. She passed. Again. Again. The intervals became predictable, a terrifying rhythm. He was unchanging. Same clothes, same gait. Never tiring, never varying his speed. A perfect, maddening loop. Stopping to wait for dawn felt like surrendering, trapping herself with him for hours. Leaving the car, striking out into the black fields. Unthinkable. What waited out there? She fumbled with the radio again, twisting the dial through static, hoping for a stray signal, a human voice. Silence. Tried the phone. Still dead. Battery life irrelevant without connection. Utterly isolated. She tested it, driving back and forth several times. Forward until she saw him. U-turn. Back until she saw him again. Always ahead, always walking in her direction of travel, always oblivious. An hour, maybe more, of this spiraling madness left her hollowed out. Shoulders knotted with tension, eyes burning from staring into the relentless dark. Her heart maintained its frantic rhythm. Her mouth felt like parchment. She sipped warm, stale water from a bottle on the passenger seat. It offered little comfort. A final attempt. She pulled over, engine running, and stepped out, phone flashlight cutting a bright swathe. He was 30 feet ahead. She approached cautiously, the beam playing over his back. His jacket seemed brownish in the artificial light, dusted, stained near the hem. She strained her ears, listening for breath, for the scuff of shoe leather. Only the faintest whisper of movement as his feet met the gravel. Closer now, heart pounding a deafening beat in her ears. She raised the light, darting sideways, trying to catch his face in the beam. A quick movement. For a fraction of a second, she saw a cheekbone, the corner of an eye. Brown, maybe. Normal. But instantly, with fluid grace, he shifted, denying her a full view. She stumbled backward, losing her balance for a moment. He walked on. Impulse took over. Her hand shot out, aiming for his shoulder. Fingers brushed rough, worn fabric, real, tangible. But as her hand closed to grip, there was nothing. Air. It was as if he'd glided forward just beyond her reach. She lunged again, arm outstretched, grasping at emptiness, nearly pitching forward onto the gravel. a vice clamped around her chest. Breath hitched, shallow and fast. She spun, sprinting back to the car, slamming the door, hitting the locks. Checked the mirror. Nothing behind. Looked forward. There he was, ahead on the road, still walking, still receding. Trapped, body exhausted, mind frayed. She jammed the gear shift, mashed the accelerator, driving toward him one last time. Closer, closer, then wrenched the wheel left, swinging wide around him. He remained on the shoulder, impassive. She passed him and just kept going. For the next hour, she drove. He appeared. She passed, appeared, passed. She stopped looking, focused entirely on the hypnotic white lines, the glowing numbers on the speedometer, the reassuring solidity of the wheel. Just move forward. Hope for change. Then, subtly, almost imperceptibly, the oppressive black began to soften at the edges. A gray dilution seeped into the eastern sky. Dawn approached. The darkness was losing its grip, and she realized with a sudden jolt, the shoulder ahead was empty. He wasn't there. She drove on, the nascent light spreading across the fields, revealing their stark emptiness. In the distance, a structure took shape. A small isolated building. A gas station, maybe. Hope surged, raw and desperate. She pressed the accelerator, hands trembling violently now. As she pulled up to the weathered building, the sun was a promise, just below the horizon. The suffocating spell of the night finally broken. She stumbled out, legs stiff, body utterly drained. The place was dilapidated but blessedly real. Inside, a payphone clung to the wall. She called a friend, her voice thin, offering no real explanation. Just come. She waited by her car, scanning the empty road behind her. Quiet. Vacant. Who the man was, how he defied distance and direction, remained an unanswered question, a cold spot in her memory. She didn't need answers. Relief was enough. It was over. That highway, however, remained a place she would never travel alone in the dark again. From the moment I crossed the threshold, a discordance hummed beneath the surface of the apartment. Visually, it presented no overt alarms. Just a tired two-room space perched on the second floor of a building drowsing at the quiet end of its street. Walls the color of old parchment, floors of scuffed hardwood whispering tales of previous tenants, the air thick with the ghosts of varnish and settled dust. A diminutive kitchen bled into a cramped living area. The sole bedroom offered a narrow window onto a fire escape, and the sheer brick face of the adjacent building, a mere arm's length away. Even the bathroom, with its archaic chain-pull toilet, seemed unremarkable, steeped in the ordinary patina of age. The anomaly was the front door. It refused sanctuary. That first night I secured it with deliberate care, turned the deadbolt until it clicked home, braced a shoulder against the wood, tugged the knob, confirming its resistance. The chain, a thin metallic snake, slid into its channel. Thrice tested, thrice confirmed. Secure. Yet sleep came fitfully, shadowed by the unfamiliar creaks and groans of the old structure, a vulnerability amplified by the landlord's, Mr. Silas's, parting words about its age being the reason for the bargain rent. No other caveats offered. Morning light, pale and revealing, found the door adrift. not wide open but parted by an inch, perhaps two, a sliver framing the dim hallway beyond. The chain dangled, limp and useless. The deadbolt stood retracted. My mind raced, scrambling for a forgotten nocturnal errand. A lapse in memory. Nothing surfaced. A knot tightened low in my gut, a peculiar weight settling in my chest. I crept forward, peered into the vacant corridor, then pulled the door shut, the locking ritual repeated with meticulous precision. A foolish error, I assured myself. Day 1. Day 2 dawned with the same unsettling tableau. Annoyance began to curdle into a sharper anxiety. This demanded proof, a tangible counter to my fraying certainty. I locked the door, slid the chain fast, then wrestled a heavy armchair, wedging its back firmly beneath the knob. A quick photograph captured the scene, time-stamped evidence against my own potential failings. Sleep was a shallow pool that night. By 7, the familiar crack of light greeted me. The chair sat askew, nudged aside. The chain hung free. A frantic inventory confirmed nothing missing, the apartment undisturbed, save for its defiant portal. My pulse thrummed a frantic rhythm against my neck. My palms slicked with a sudden cold sweat. I hastily wiped against my trousers, forcing a semblance of calm. The subsequent day dissolved into a frustrating phone call with Mr. Silas. My report was met with weary skepticism. "Never heard of such a thing," he insisted, his voice flat. "Worked fine for the last girl. You sure you're locking it right?" My assertion that I possessed a lifetime's experience with locks elicited only a vague promise to come take a look. A promise that evaporated into the stale air between us. He never appeared. Fine, I would fortify. A pilgrimage to the hardware store yielded a gleaming new deadbolt, twin padlocks heavy in my hand, and a chain far thicker than its predecessor. The afternoon was spent in the meticulous surgery of replacement, the old unreliable mechanism excised, the new fitted and tested again and again, until the crisp clicks and solid thunks offered a fragile reassurance. That evening, my old laptop, resurrected as a sentinel, perched near the kitchen, its webcam eye fixed unwaveringly on the door. Motion detection software stood ready to capture the intruder. The explanation, the something. A small lamp cast feeble amber light across the living room, a beacon against potential fumbling in the dark. Sleep remained elusive. Every groan of the building's ancient plumbing, the muffled drone of a neighbor's television seeping through plaster, the sigh of passing cars, each sound snagged my attention. Time dripped by, measured inaptly glances at my phone's glowing face. Well past midnight, exhaustion finally dragged me under. A sound, soft as a sigh, prized my eyes open. A faint creak. The door. My heart leapt, hammering against my ribs. I slid from bed, the chill of the bare wood floor shocking my feet. Padding toward the living room, mouth dry as dust, I saw it. Illuminated by the lamp's weak glow, the door stood ajar once more. The new, formidable locks hung slack, defeated as easily as the old. The sturdy chain was disengaged. Both padlocks rested on the floor, not broken or forced, simply open. My makeshift security system. I snatched the laptop, fingers fumbling with the trackpad. The recording offered only absurdity. One frame, The door, secure, mundane. The next, the door, open. No blur of motion, no sound of footsteps picked up by the microphone. No figure crossing the threshold. It was a glitch in reality. A clean excision of cause. I replayed it, leaning closer, scrutinizing the pixels. Nothing. The door simply opened. My hand trembled as I resecured the entrance, the new deadbolt turning with a resistance that felt purely symbolic now. A slow breath hitched in my tight throat. Rationality warred with the evidence. I'd never credited the supernatural, not truly, still didn't. Yet the explanation remained stubbornly out of reach. Resigned, I sank into the armchair facing the door, determined to keep vigil until morning. I sat motionless, a sentry guarding against an invisible siege. Nothing further disturbed the quiet. The following day brought futile inquiries. Neighbors, mostly older residents, settled deep into the building's rhythms, offered little more than shrugs. No, never had door trouble. "Old building," one man offered, gesturing vaguely. "Floors warp, doors settle. Locks probably don't line up." But I'd replaced the locks myself, aligned them perfectly. Another neighbor, eyes narrowed with impatience, claimed he never heard a peep from my unit. The building manager, Mr. Henderson, occupied a small dusty office on the ground floor, his face etched with permanent fatigue. He agreed, without enthusiasm, to examine the door. Upstairs, he jiggled the knob, tested the deadbolt. "Seems fine," he pronounced. "Maybe somebody's got a key." He offered to replace the entire doorknob assembly, an offer I grasped readily. We performed the swap together, the old knob tossed unceremoniously into a hallway bin. He handed me the sole set of keys. No duplicates existed now. That night, the surveillance doubled. One camera inside, aimed at the door. Another, positioned discreetly in the hallway, outside, focused on my entrance. Mr. Silas's potential anger be damned. Both fed continuous streams to my laptop. Then the locking ritual, now feeling like a desperate prayer. The manager's new knob lock, the heavy deadbolt I'd installed, the thick chain, the twin padlocks clicked shut onto sturdy hasps. The cold weight of metal felt substantial, real, tested, proven strong. I took up my post in the armchair, mere feet away. A dusty baseball bat, unearthed from a storage box, lay heavy across my lap. Sweat beaded on my forehead, wiped away with the back of my hand. Silence pressed in, punctuated only by the refrigerator's low hum and the distant murmur of the city. On the laptop screen, twin rectangles displayed the empty hallway and the stoic, sealed door. Hours crawled. My back ached, legs cramped. The urge to lie down was a siren song I resisted. Sips of water, dry crackers, sustenance taken mechanically before returning to the vigil. My eyes burned. The apartment seemed to grow colder despite the heater's efforts. Around 2 a.m, a whisper of sound. Not loud, barely there. A soft snick, infinitesimal, like tumblers aligning within a lock. My gaze snapped to the door, motionless. The laptop screens remained unchanged. Hallway empty, doorway still. I leaned forward, knuckles white on the bat handle, breathing shallowly through my mouth. Then it happened. The door eased open. An inch, then two, a delicate, protesting creak. I watched, transfixed, as the chain slid free from its channel, saw the padlocks release one after the other, falling to the floor with muffled clanks. Witnessed the deadbolt knob rotate, smoothly, impossibly, on its own axis. I was right there. It unfolded before my eyes. My heart felt fit to burst, a painful thudding that echoed in my ears. A vile metallic taste flooded my mouth. Breathing became a conscious, difficult effort against a crushing weight in my chest. My hands shook uncontrollably. I tried to rise, wielding the bat, but my knees buckled, weak as water. A glance at the laptop confirmed the impossible. The exterior feed showed absolute emptiness. The interior feed mirrored the horrifying reality I was witnessing. No hands, no tools, no person. Just the door, yielding to an unseen force. A tremor ran through me. Reaching out with the bat, I nudged the door wider. It swung inward with silent obedience, revealing the dimly lit, vacant hallway. Same faded wallpaper, same old light fixtures. I stepped into the doorway, scanning left, then right. Empty. I examined the hinges, solid, intact. The floor beneath, level, stable. I pulled the door closed. It latched normally. I locked it, slid the chain, stepped back, bat still clutched tight, heart a frantic drum against my ribs. For another hour, I watched. It remained shut. Eventually slumped in the chair. Sleep claimed me. I awoke stiff-necked, the bat still cradled, to find the door closed. But every single lock, the knob, the deadbolt, the chain, the padlocks, was once again undone. The next day became a slow-motion replay. Frame by painstaking frame, the laptop footage revealed the exact moment of violation. The chain flying back as if flicked by an invisible finger, the padlock springing open sequentially, the deadbolt turning with ghostly precision. Yet nothing occupied the space where an agent should be. The hallway camera offered only unwavering emptiness throughout the night. Proof, yes. But proof of what? And to whom? Another call to Mr. Silas. More disbelief. I offered the video. He demurred. No time. If I wished to break the lease, fine. But the deposit was forfeit. His voice was rough with impatience, weary of my inexplicable problem. A friend, reached by phone, offered the only sane advice. Get out of there. I considered it, the logic undeniable. But funds were low. This place, despite its violation, was cheap. And deeper than that, a stubborn refusal to yield, a gnawing need to understand. One more attempt. I removed the chain and padlocks altogether, replacing them with a sturdy new latch, screwed directly into the wood. I added a heavy sliding bolt, anchoring it deep into the door frame. Tested everything. Cameras repositioned. That night, exhaustion won sooner. I drifted off only to be jolted awake hours later by that familiar, soft creak. Scrambling to the door, I found it ajar. The new latch lay on the floor beside its screws. The sliding bolt was retracted. A wave of nausea rose, hot and acidic. I locked it again, the gesture purely reflexive now, devoid of hope. It would open. The following night found me sitting on the floor, directly before the door, flashlight in one hand, a crowbar in the other. I pressed my ear to the cool wood, straining for any betraying sound. Only the building's usual nocturnal sighs, a rattling pipe, distant traffic. I murmured reassurances to myself, a litany against rising panic. A solution. I just needed a solution. But there was no forced entry, no splintered wood, no tool marks. The locks weren't broken, they simply yielded. Defeated, I retreated. Hauled my belongings, clothes, books, boxes, into the bedroom. Locked its flimsy interior door, wedged the dresser against it for pathetic reinforcement. There I sat on the edge of the bed, listening. Sometime in the pre-dawn quiet, I heard the faint, telltale creak of the front door swinging open. I didn't investigate. I just sat, knees drawn up, breathing measuredly, fighting the tide of fear. My heart hammered, my palms were slick again. When morning finally broke, a glance confirmed the front door was open, the hallway beyond it empty. I closed it without bothering to lock it. What was the use? A locksmith came, summoned in desperation. He examined everything with professional detachment, found nothing wrong, installed yet another brand new lock, high security, top of the line. The cost was steep. I paid, adrift in dwindling options. That night I watched it happen again. The expensive, expertly installed lock offered no more resistance than the cheap, old ones. After that, the fight bled out of me. There was no figuring it out, no rational explanation to grasp. Stuffing a towel along the bottom edge only resulted in finding the towel tossed aside by morning. Jamming the armchair under the knob meant finding the chair neatly relocated. Stacking boxes proved equally futile. They'd be nudged out of the way. Whatever it was, it wanted the door open, and it would not be denied. Sleep became a forgotten country. Exhaustion settled deep in my bones, stealing appetite, fraying nerves. Every quiet moment was haunted by the image of that door, the silent, inexorable swing. The fear wasn't just of the unknown, but of what might eventually come through that perpetually opening portal, even though nothing ever seemed to. Nothing was ever taken. Watching from the hallway yielded nothing. The phenomenon seemed to require my presence inside, my attention elsewhere, my guard momentarily down. The end was quiet resignation. Packing took 2 days, each box filled under the constant, unnerving surveillance of the door over my shoulder. On the final night, I slept fully clothed, leaving the door unlocked. It would open regardless. One camera rolled, recording the inevitable foregone conclusion. Emptiness, and a door obeying an unseen hand. Morning. Boxes carried down the worn stairs. A final glance at Mr. Henderson, who offered only a non-committal shrug from his dusty office doorway. Then out onto the street, into the cool air. I started walking, destination uncertain, only the imperative to move away dictating my steps. Behind me, I could vividly picture it, the door to apartment 2B drifting open once more into the silent, empty hallway. A chill traced its way up my spine as I rounded the corner, resolutely not looking back. There were no answers to be found there, only an escape to be made. The Kenworth's chrome grille devoured the miles, its headlamps punch in twin holes in the Stygian velvet ahead. An eternity of asphalt unspooled before me, the highway's hypnotic drone a low thrum in my bones. Hours bled into one another, marked only by the fleeting ghosts of oncoming rigs, their lights ephemeral streaks against the profound dark. Then, apparition-like at the edge of illumination, a solitary shape, thumb raised against the indifferent void. Prudence screamed break, screamed drive on, but the sheer weight of solitude, a passenger heavier than any cargo, nudged my foot toward the pedal. A choice spun out in the hum of rubber on road, utterly mundane, yet pregnant with a terror I couldn't yet fathom. I bled speed, easing the 18-wheeler onto the gravel shoulder, the tires crunching like bones. The shape resolved into a man, 30s maybe, backpack slung with weary familiarity. Ordinary until you saw the eyes. Something flat resided there, like stones at the bottom of a cold, deep well. Too late. The passenger window sighed downward, releasing the cab's stale warmth into the night. Going far? My voice, attempting casual, sounded thin and reedy in the vastness. His smile bloomed, wide and quick, but it never touched the glacial stillness in his gaze. "Your direction is mine, friend," he offered, the voice like poured honey laced with something sharp. "Destination flexible." A discordant note hummed in my gut. Louder now, insistent. Still the cab felt cavernously empty, the silence pressing in. "All right, climb aboard," I conceded, flicking the lock, the click unnaturally loud. Bound for Phoenix. He slipped inside, the worn canvas of his pack whispering against the floor mats as he dropped it. An odor accompanied him. Stale exertion, yes, but underneath, a faint coppery tang that prickled my nostrils like static electricity. I wrestled the rig back onto the blacktop, trying to ignore the unwelcome scent, the sudden intimacy of this stranger beside me. "Silas," I offered into the charged silence, eyes flicking sideways for a fraction of a second. "What has you roadside tonight?" A beat of silence stretched, taut as wire. He watched the dashed lines devour themselves in the headlights. "Carver," he finally supplied. "Just moving between chapters." The air thickened, becoming heavy, difficult to breathe. I punched buttons on the radio, seeking refuge in static, in the tinny strains of some forgotten country song. Anything to fill the void. Carver seemed content with the quiet, which only amplified my mounting unease. The less conversation, perhaps the better. An hour, maybe more, dissolved into the engine's steady rhythm before he spoke again, his voice pitched low, conspiratorial. "So, Silas, you do this often? Play Samaritan on the midnight roads?" A shrug, trying to seem nonchalant, keeping my gaze welded forward to the receding horizon. "Gets quiet out here." A chuckle, dry and brittle like autumn leaves, scraped against my nerves. Quiet, yes. Most folks fear the quiet. Fear who might be listening. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. figure most people are just trying to get somewhere, like me. Oh, I'm definitely trying to get somewhere, Carver affirmed, a new chilling edge honing his tone. The real question is, are you going to facilitate my arrival? Confusion made me glance over. His eyes locked onto mine, hard and bright, with an unsettling predatory energy that hadn't been there before. Meaning? My voice held, just barely. Carver reached down, the zip on his pack tearing the silence like ripping fabric. My pulse hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the engine's drone. What was he reaching for? His hand emerged, gripping the stag handle of a large hunting knife, its polished blade catching the dim cab light with a sinister gleam. "Pull this rig over," he commanded, his voice utterly devoid of inflection, flat and calm, as if he were asking me to pass the salt. Panic flared, hot and blinding, miles from anywhere. No headlights fore or aft, just endless empty darkness. Stop? Madness. I had to stall, buy time. "Whoa there, friend." I forced a laugh, brittle and false, hoping it sounded convincing. "Wanted the wheel?" Just had to ask. No need for the cutlery. His expression became granite, unforgiving. "Pull. Over. Now." I feigned compliance, easing off the gas, letting the massive truck drift toward the shoulder's edge. Slower. Slower. My eyes tracked Carver in the periphery, every nerve screaming. He glanced down, just a flicker, checking our declining speed. Now. I stomped the brakes with all my might and wrenched the wheel hard left. The sudden, violent maneuver flung Carver against the passenger door with a sickening thud. The knife spun free, clattering onto the floor mat. The trailer fishtailed behind us, a monstrous groaning pendulum of steel, and I fought the wheel, wrestling the beast back from the brink of disaster. Carver scrambled, cursing, fingers scrabbling desperately for the fallen blade. Seconds. I had only seconds. I snatched the CB mic, thumb jamming the transmit button. "Mayday, mayday. This is Nomad Silas. Got a hostile situation, armed passenger." A fist exploded against my jaw. Light fractured behind my eyes into 1,000 blinding shards. The world tilted violently as the truck bucked, tires screaming as they left the pavement, careening into the rough terrain. Dust choked the air as we lurched to a jarring halt, the engine shuddering into silence. Before the stars finished dancing in my vision, Carver was on me, his hands clamping around my throat, thumbs digging deep into the hollows beneath my jaw. "Bad move, Silas," he hissed, his face a mask of contorted fury inches from mine, his breath hot and foul. Could have been simple. "Air." I clawed frantically at his wrists, my vision tunneling, black spots blooming at the edges. Blindly, my free hand flailed, searching for anything, any advantage. Metal, cold and solid. My thermos still heavy with lukewarm coffee. With a final surge of adrenaline born of sheer terror, I swung it, connecting with the side of his head. A wet, satisfying crack echoed in the confines of the cab. Carver's grip slackened instantly. I shoved him off me hard, gulping ragged lungfuls of the dusty air. He slumped against the passenger door, dazed but conscious, a thin trickle of blood tracing a path from his temple. Escape. Now. I threw myself at the driver's door handle, practically falling out of the high cab in my haste. The cool, sharp shock of the night air hit me like a physical blow, clearing some of the fog from my head. Staggering upright on unsteady legs, I lurched toward the passenger side, needing to keep him contained, trapped until help could arrive. Too late. The door flew open with explosive force, Carver spilling out onto the dirt, the knife miraculously back in his hand, glinting wickedly under the faint starlight. He lunged, a wild, desperate slash. Fire erupted along my forearm as I recoiled, stumbling backward. "You're making this difficult," Carver panted, advancing on me, his eyes wild. "Just give me the keys. We end this now." I backed away, my mind racing. The keys, still dangling in the ignition. If he reached them, he'd have my livelihood, my escape, and I'd be stranded in this wasteland with a psychopath. "Why?" I asked, playing for time, searching the darkness for an opening, a weapon, anything. "Why are you doing this?" He grinned, that same cold, unnerving smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Because I can," he said simply, the words chilling me to the bone. "Because watching the fear bloom on your face, it's exquisite, Silas, truly beautiful." A visceral dread washed over me. This wasn't robbery. This was sport. He enjoyed the terror, thrived on it. With sickening clarity, I knew he never intended for me to see the sunrise. As he lunged again, knife leading, I made a split-second decision born of desperation. Instead of dodging, I charged forward, meeting him head-on. The unexpected move caught him off guard. We collided hard, the impact sending us both sprawling into the dirt and gravel. We grappled frantically, a chaotic tangle of limbs, dust stinging my eyes, the coppery scent of his blood thick in the air. He fought with a manic energy, unnervingly strong, but terror and adrenaline fueled me. I managed to pin his knife hand to the unforgiving ground, using my heavier weight to hold him down. With my free hand, I struck his face, once, twice, 3 times, hard, desperate blows. His grip on the knife finally loosened. I wrenched it from his grasp and scrambled backward, panting heavily, chest heaving. He lay there, blood streaming from his nose, and began to laugh, a low wheezing sound that curdled my blood. "Go on," he gasped. "Finish it. You want to." My hand tightened on the knife's handle. The temptation flickered, a primal urge to end the threat, to silence the madness. But looking down at his broken figure, I saw his true aim, to drag me down into his darkness, to make me like him. Instead, I hurled the knife with all my strength, sending it spinning far into the impenetrable blackness beyond the shoulder. "It's over," I said, my voice hoarse, ragged. "Police are coming. You lost." As if summoned by my words, the distant rising keen of sirens sliced through the night. Someone had heard my fragmented Mayday call. Relief, potent and sudden, washed over me, making my knees weak. Carver's laughter abruptly curdled into ragged, desperate sobs. a chilling, pathetic sound in the sudden stillness. I kept my distance, wary and exhausted, watching him until the pulsing red and blue strobes painted the desolate scene in frantic light. Dawn painted the eastern sky in bruised pastels as I sat on the cold metal bumper of an ambulance, a scratchy blanket draped around my shoulders, my arm stinging beneath fresh bandages. A detective, his face etched with the fatigue of too many long nights, approached, notepad in hand. "Mr. Coleman," he began, his voice grave. "I don't know if you understand how fortunate you are. That man, Carver, we've been hunting him across 2 states. He's linked to at least 3 homicides." Bile rose in my throat. Another statistic. I nearly was. "What happens to him now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "He won't see daylight outside prison walls for a very, very long time," the detective assured me, his eyes holding a measure of grim satisfaction. "Thanks to you, some families might finally get some answers, some peace." They led Carver, handcuffed and slumped, to a waiting cruiser. Our eyes met one last time across the intervening space. The absolute zero, the chilling emptiness I saw there, would be etched behind my eyelids forever, a permanent scar on my memory. The sun climbed insistent, burning away the night's shadows. My rig, scarred but structurally whole, waited patiently, unlike its driver. Catching my reflection in the large side mirror as I prepared to leave, I saw deeper lines etched around my eyes, a weariness that hadn't been there 12 hours ago, a reflection of someone irrevocably changed. The open road, once a canvas of freedom and solitary possibility, now felt edged with an invisible, lurking menace. The deep-seated loneliness I'd sought to banish by picking up a stranger now seemed a small price, a welcome shield for the assurance of safety. Yet as I eased the Kenworth back onto the highway, a grim, hard-won resilience settled deep within me. I had stared into the abyss, felt its chilling breath, and hadn't blinked. Whatever lay beyond the next curve, down the endless ribbon of road, I'd meet it. The diesel engine settled into its familiar, powerful rhythm, a comforting mechanical heartbeat in the quiet morning. Merging onto the empty highway, I made a silent, unbreakable pact with myself. From now on, it was just me, my rig, and the long road ahead. And strangely, profoundly, it no longer felt quite so lonely. It began 3 weeks back, a spectre born of storm, just standing there, rain slicked, gaze fixed upon my little house on Larkspur Close. An anomaly then, an obsession now. Sleep is a forgotten country, leaving an impossibility. He watches, always. The vigil is eternal. Night 1. Returning from the late shift, the city breathing its last exhausted sighs. Wipers smeared arcs across the glass, battling a deluge that turned streetlights into watery constellations on the asphalt river. 2:37 a.m. blinked neon green on the dash. My headlights swept the drive, snagging on him. A column of darkness draped in a coat, utterly immobile on the curb opposite my porch. A silhouette against the sodium glow, face lost to shadow, aiming his presence squarely at my front door. The engine hummed a low threnody beneath the percussive rain. Stillness radiated from him, an unnerving counterpoint to the storm's chaos. 2:39 a.m. A lost soul? A patient wait? A knot tightened low in my gut. Clutching my satchel, I plunged into the downpour, the chill a sudden shock. I turned, readying a question, an offer of aid. Empty pavement stared back, vanished, not walked, not run, erased. The nearest refuge yards away, sidelines clear. He had simply ceased to be there. Tremors in my hands fumbled the key. Absurd, I chided myself. A rideshare phantom, a trick of tired eyes. Inside the ritual of shedding wet layers, the solace of a late meal, the retreat to bed, dismissed, until the following night. The same relentless rain, the same weary return. 2:41 a.m., and there. The sentinel resumed his post. Same obsidian coat, same unnerving inertia, same sightless focus on my home. No hesitation this time. Out of the car, voice cleaving the sodden quiet. "You, need something?" The sound absorbed by the wet air, leaving only silence and the drumming rain. He offered no flicker, no sign of hearing. "Look, this isn't normal. Who are you?" Still nothing. A pulse of anger surged through the unease. Stepping closer, "I swear, I'm calling the authorities if you don't." Blink. Gone again. A vacuum where solid form had stood moments before. I dashed across the lane, heart hammering. The concrete, slick and dark, held no impression. Up the street. Down the street. Only shadows and the ceaseless weeping sky. Retreating indoors felt like sealing a tomb. Bolts slid home, latches clicked, curtains drawn tight against the watching dark. Just some creep, the rational mind insisted, a prank. But the deeper tremor remained. Sleep, when it came, was thin and fraught with shadows resembling dark coats. Morning brought resolve. 4 digital eyes, wireless sentinels of my own purchased and mounted before the sun reached its zenith. 1 for the drive, 1 guarding the threshold, 2 flanking the sidewalk approach. The phone app glowed with crisp, panoramic views. Let him come. Technology would snare this phantom. A dry night, strangely tense. Home at 2:35 a.m., the street blessedly vacant. Camera feeds checked religiously before crossing the threshold. Then at 3:17 a.m., the phone's vibration shattered the quiet. Motion detected, sidewalk east. Palm slick with sweat, I fumbled the app open. Empty concrete under the infrared gaze. All feeds clear, but the alert's timestamp, 3 minutes prior. Playback. And there he was, materializing from nowhere into the frame's center. That rigid stance, that unwavering stare aimed at my walls. Precisely 60 seconds of absolute stillness. Then a flicker, a digital hiccup almost too fast to register, an empty space again. 10 replays yielded no logic. No blur of movement, just present, then absent. How? I saved the clip, captured stills, cast them into the digital ocean of forums dedicated to the uncanny and the vigilant eye. Derision mostly, fake and glitch, whispers of the spectral. One self-proclaimed video analyst confirmed the raw data showed no manipulation. The figure simply blinked out of existence between frames. Sleep was banished. I became a watcher myself, eyes glued to the phone's multiple perspectives. 3:17 a.m., the chime. There, sidewalk east. Identical posture, coat, bearing. Phone clutched like a talisman. I flung the door open and stepped onto the porch. He remained. solid, tangible beneath the street lamp's sterile glare. The coat seemed to absorb the light, its texture unnervingly perfect. But the face? Oh, the face was a violation of perception. A smear, a blur, features refusing to coalesce, shifting like smoke under direct gaze. My breath hitched. My limbs turned to lead. Slowly, with an unnatural fluid grace that defied mechanics, the head began to rotate towards me. Panic seized me. I scrambled back inside, door slamming, body slumping against the wood, air tearing at my lungs. When I dared lift my phone, the screens were dead. Offline. An hour crawled by before the digital eyes reopened. No trace remained. The footage archives for that specific interval, corrupted, pixelated snow, digital ghosts where evidence should be. The next day bled away in a fever of online searching, abandoning work, chasing digital breadcrumbs. Scattered accounts surfaced, whispers from disparate corners of the web. Silent watchers by night, fixated on dwellings, vanishing acts defying physics. Always the same frustrating lack of clarity, no definitive proof. That evening, I didn't go home. Parked blocks away, observing my own house like a stranger. 3:17 a.m. He materialized. Through binoculars, the coat resolved into something archaic, a cut from decades past, yet impossibly pristine. Hands hung at his sides, bone white and still. A full minute of this silent tableau, then dissolution. I fled. A sterile hotel room miles away became my refuge. It offered none. 3:17 a.m., a single sharp rattle at the door. Through the peephole's distorting lens, him. Standing sentinel in the bland corridor, that vortex of a face aimed squarely at my temporary sanctuary. 3 different hotels, 3 consecutive nights. The same punctual, silent summons. Sleep became a myth. Appetite vanished. The job inevitably dissolved into the static of unanswered calls. 2 nights passed. Something fractured within me. The terror gave way to a desperate need for understanding. 3:16 a.m. Hotel door pulled open. I stood waiting in the threshold's artificial light. He appeared, not yards away, but there, inches from me. Close enough to feel a chthonic cold radiating outwards, to see the fabric of his coat ripple with an internal, non-Euclidean motion. The face, memory recoils, refusing to hold the shape of it. No voice sounded, yet words bloomed, cold and clear, inside my skull. You perceive. You are woven in. Woven into what? The whisper felt torn from my throat. The vigil, your watch approaches. And he was gone. Now the knowing settles like frost. The change began subtly, a creeping stiffness in the joints, a slowing of thought, an insidious yearning for stillness, for the fixed perspective. Tonight marks the end of my frantic orbit, the beginning of my station. My skin feels taut, alien. Thoughts elongate, quieting into a vast, patient landscape. Soon I will take my place. Another curb, another rain-swept street, another pair of eyes fixed upon a window joining the silent chorus. Read this. Understand it as a final semaphore flare from a receding shore. If your gaze falls upon a solitary figure bathed in streetlight, locked in silent contemplation of a home not their own, avert your eyes. Do not question, do not linger, for to truly see us is the first step toward becoming us. My fingers stiffen, the keys grow heavy. It is nearly time. The rain whispers its invitation. The pavement calls. I must stand now. I must watch. I must